Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Boerne Brew. We're recording here in the Boerne Radio Studios in the Richter Building, and you can listen to the Boerne Brew on 103.9 FM and 1500 AM, and you can also listen to the Boerne Brew on the Boerne Star and Boerne Radio websites. I'm the host of today's show. My name is Kerry Barboza, and I'm the sports editor of the Boerne Star. We have Roland J. Ruiz in the house as our studio engineer, and he's pushing all the right buttons. And our guest today is Tim Christ. Tim has written a book about Boerne Little League and their historic run in 2024, and it's entitled How Boerne Made History and Played on Their Field of Dreams. The book released April Fool's Day, actually, right? No fooling either. And so, Tim, thank you for coming out on the show.
I appreciate you having me, Kerry.
Well, the book, I was glancing through it, and you sent us at the Boerne Star a digital copy, so it's more than just about that season, the 2024 season when Boerne Little League went to the World Series and played in the national championship game. You talk about youth athletic development. You trace Boerne's baseball history. You talk about some of the ball players from years past from Boerne. You know, how many times teams from Texas have made the Little League World Series. So the book is a lot of things, isn't it?
It is. I guess, I mean, you know, obviously it was a historic moment for us, but, you know, there's always the larger story that surrounds, you know, what happened, right? So as I was writing the book, I was like, there was pieces I wanted to pull on certain threads. So like you mentioned, the history of Boerne baseball, I mean, because that was a really important piece, because Justin had seen really good baseball coming out of Boerne for a long, long time, but he'd never seen that same level of talent in Boerne Little League. And so that was kind of one of the impetuses for actually forming our team. But then, too, just obviously, you know, being a lifetime Texan, too, getting to travel to all those different cities in Texas, there's really cool stories about just about every city in Texas. And so I wanted to include a little bit of that kind of nuance in the book as well. Plus, I mean, obviously, I've lived in a number of different places. So when we played the Brownsville team, I lived in Brownsville for a little while, so I've got some very fond memories of my time down there, and, you know, going across the border to eat at Garcia's and going to South Padre Island a bunch and stuff. And so I just included a little bit of that, you know, additional context in the book, just for, you know, to give some folks additional flavor, as well as, if you're not from Texas, to kind of give you a better sense of, you know, all the cool things that we've got around the state.
So why write the book? I mean, what are you hoping to accomplish with it? Obviously, it's a historical record, but there's a lot of facts in there. You're a researcher, I can tell. You do a lot of research. So what were you hoping to accomplish with this book? Well, yeah, number one, it's a historical record. So, you know, I make the joke that before my memory leaves me, we want to be able to share this story with Caleb and his kids and grandkids ultimately, right? You know, 50 years down the road. The other reason, though, was I really wrote it as a how-to. So it's they call it a creative nonfiction. So it's historical nonfiction with the how-to blend. And the idea was, how do you inspire other parents and coaches in little leagues to basically do the same thing that we did and you know, build a team and then ultimately get to this global stage? And, you know, the, I guess, unpopular answer is that it's pretty simple, but it's really difficult. It's simply a lot of hard work. Right. There's nothing really special about any of our kids. I mean, I say that very carefully. They are very special to us, but there's nothing special about them. None of them are freakishly good athletes, you know, natural athletes, if that word even exists. They're all really good kids from really good families that have had a lot of intentional athletic development over a lot of years, and also a lot of intentional development in baseball over a lot of years. And they're fantastic athletes. And so I put all the statistics in the book to show how good you can be as a baseball player by 12 years old. And just to, you know, not that we're going to condemn anybody, but just to give you a measurement tool. Because, you know, obviously, you know, like me as a parent, I know where Caleb is now at 13 years old. But I'm not sure exactly where he should be or would like to be by 14 or 15. But I can go research that, like you mentioned, and figure out where some other 14 and 15-year-olds are and see if, hey, are we in the ballpark? Are we surpassing that or whatever? And so really, like I said, it was designed to be an inspirational story, too, of here's what you can do with some intentional, you know, parenting and development for your kids. So the book is available. It looks like hard copy and digital. How is it available? Where can you get it? How much does it cost? Is it available both hard copy and digital?
Both and, yes. We've got an initial shipment coming here to Boerne next week. Dale's bookstore here will be carrying several copies of it. And obviously we'll do some of the local events and have it available at those places. There's obviously the digital copy does exist, so you can get it on Kindle if that's, you know, your preferred reading method. But I think, you know, for stuff like this, probably most people are going to want to have a copy of this on a bookshelf somewhere there in their house.
How much does the book cost?
$19.99. So okay. It's right in line with, we're not trying to, and, you know, if you know anything about book publishing and book sales, most of the time it's a money losing proposition. But if there are any net proceeds from this at all, then we plan to donate a significant portion of those back to the Boerne youth sports programs to just help pay it forward.
Okay. And so when did the idea for the book come to you? Was it during that historic season, or did you start thinking, because I know you've written other books, but did your brain kind of start thinking, this would be a good book, I'm going to start kind of gathering info?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that whole spring and summer was such a whirlwind that we weren't thinking about anything in the future. We were having to just focus on that particular moment in time and manage everything that was going on there. Once we got home, and then we still had a whole lot of things going on. I mean, we still went to the Spurs game. The boys went to the Texas Capitol, where they had this,
right.
The Senate gave them the, State Resolution 561 that commemorated their efforts, and a host of other activities that we participated in. And so I would say it was probably 6 to 9 months after that summer ended that I was kind of had it in the back of my mind, like, hey, that's something we probably really would like to put down on paper. And so just over the course of the last several months here, I was kind of bouncing around different ideas, like what angle do we take, right? Do we just make it just a strict record of how we played? Do we try to turn it into something a little bit more as far as giving people sort of the how-to? And so, like I said, I thought about 3 or 4 or 5 different angles and ultimately settled on the one that I went with, which was, like I said, kind of, I guess I imitated the book Moneyball a little bit, with kind of how did the Oakland A's, from being a very poor team, ultimately end up winning so many pennants and being such a fantastic team. So we had a similar story, right? Obviously, Boerne never been anywhere in the Little League, system before. So we're this upstart underdog team from a small town in Texas. How do we get to this global stage, right? So I saw a lot of parallels in the stories and figured that was probably the most appropriate route to take with the perspective of the book.
That is Tim Chris joining us here on the Boerne Brew. I'm the host of today's show. My name is Kerry Barboza, and Tim's book is called How Boerne Made History and Played on Their Field of Dreams. It's available online. Is it probably Kindle? Is it on Amazon? It's
Yes,
going to
sir.
be available there, so just look for it there, and at a bookstore in town that you mentioned here as well. We were communicating with the newspaper up there in Pennsylvania, and they were sending us information and that sort of thing. And they,
Oh yeah, the Sun Gazette.
yeah, apparently they're used to this, so they work with all the teams that are coming, and they contact the newspapers. And so we had a thing going with them, and so they were very helpful to us as well. But then I know when it was over, you had the big parade here that Monday, and I remember it was raining, kind of like today. It was just kind of overcast, wet. And you had that big parade, and I don't know how many people, several thousands showed up. I don't know what the exact number was, but I posted a video on Twitter or X, and to that day, that is the #1 most watched video on my Boerne Star Sport Twitter account. I got about 500,000 views.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that was there was people from all over the world leaving comments. One guy from Germany wrote me and said, yeah, I'm from Germany, and we would never do that with any of our little league teams, or something like that. And there's a few yahoos out there, but for the most part it was all pretty positive stuff. And still to that day, that's the largest most watched video that I've ever posted, and it's that parade route where they were in the trucks and 2 or 3 guys were in each truck and all that. So that set the record for views.
Well, we definitely have to appreciate you guys. I mean, like you said, you covered, the entire series. I mean, when we won district, you guys had a big write-up, in the newspaper, and so that was really appreciated. And obviously a bunch of the families, we've all got the clippings. And then when we won section, you guys did another, big write-up. And then obviously when we won state there in Abilene, you guys just continued with the coverage of it, and so that sure did help. And then obviously once we got past state, then it got real, and so then we started, some pretty active fundraising efforts. So it was really helpful that you guys had already, let everybody know kind of what was going on. And that's, at that time I would say that, obviously district, we showed up there and we were scared to death because obviously we knew we had a bunch of good baseball players, but just as you're well aware, anything can happen in baseball. And so you start walking kids and you don't get hits, and all of a sudden you lose. But we, once we won district and section, we were like, and when we beat McAllister Park, we're like, there might be something pretty special here. And then when we won state, then it was like, okay, now the pressure's on a little bit more. And then when we went to Waco, and the competition got even tighter, but we still won those games. And it was just, I talk in the book about it being the Boerne freight train that just wasn't going to stop at that point.
Yeah, matter of fact, you guys won 17 straight games, right, at one point. And,
yes, sir.
And actually, the only 2 losses were the two for the national championship game, and then the third place international championship game. So
that's right at the end.
Yeah, 17 straight wins. So let's give a shout out to the team, the 12 players on that team. I'm sure you have the names there. I mean, I've got them, but you know most of them by heart. And your son, Caleb's on the team, and I'm sure your son has friends that he still stays in contact with. Well, let's give a shout out to the 12 players.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So we had Julian Hurst, who was pitcher and first baseman. We had Ben Burkhart, who played the outfield. We had Doc Modford, who pitched and was catcher and also played some center field for us. Cole Newsom played a lot of first base, did some pitching as well. Caden Guffey was a pitcher and also catcher and also played some third base. Gage Stubing played the outfield for us. Gray Collins was a pitcher and also played some outfield for us. Jet Matthews was obviously our fantastic shortstop all summer. Cooper Hastings pitched quite a bit and also played third base for us. Aiden Munoz played a lot of second base, did really good there in middle infield. Dylan Burke played a lot of third base for us there at the hot corner and also played some outfield for us. And then Caleb obviously did some pitching and also played the outfield. So we had, the 12 kids and families we had were just absolutely fantastic kids and athletes, and it was a joy to spend all summer with all of those folks.
And they were coached by Coach Newsom, Cole's dad. And I didn't know this about Coach Newsom, but he played at Comfort. He's from Comfort.
He did, that's right.
He played for Paul Talbert, and actually he and I got to talking, and I actually covered him when he was in high school.
Did you?
I didn't know that.
Small world.
Yeah, small world. But tell us the coaches. I believe Coach Newsom, Coach Munoz, there was a few others that were involved in the whole process there.
Yeah, so Justin was he was our general manager. Then we had Jonathan Collins, who was Gray's dad, was one of our coaches. And then Bert Munoz, which is Aiden's dad, was our other coach. So the three of them were the dynamic trio.
Yeah, and then Chris Kerry, I believe, is the Boerne Little League
He's the president.
And so he was there, and he was keeping me kind of in the loop about things, because I didn't want to bother Coach Newsom, because I know he had 800 things he had to do, so I would text Mr. Kerry, and he would give me, the boys are going to be here today. They're going to meet the MLB stars that came for that one weekend and things like that. So he kind of kept me in the loop, so I appreciate that. But so how old are the boys now? What grade are they in at this point?
So all of the boys are now 14, except for Caleb. He was a year younger, so Caleb's 13. So all the boys are in 8th grade. Most of them are going into high school this next year.
Okay.
Caleb's going to be going into 8th grade. So it'll be interesting to see. It's almost an even split between Boerne High and Champion. It'll be interesting to see how those boys do with, obviously they're all going to, most of them are going to go try out. And so we'll see if they can make the team as freshmen, or if, obviously because we've got some really fantastic baseball players already on both teams, if they've got to wait maybe till their sophomore year before they get to see some varsity ball.
Now, one of them was a Geneva kid. Which one was the one going to Geneva?
Ben goes to Geneva.
Ben,
That's
okay.
Right.
So he may stay there.
He's going to, he's incredibly smart and really skilled in academics. I don't know offhand if he's going to stay in Geneva for the entire time or if he's going to transfer to one of the high schools.
So you said it's kind of evenly split between Boerne High and Boerne Champion, because at one time I heard that the majority were going to go to Champion, and I guess they still could because they have school choice, but it sounds like it's going to be a pretty maybe 50-50 split.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4 kids are going to each. Let's kind of see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, because the guys that were on the same team playing in the national championship game are going to be competing against each other. How many of them still play baseball?
Just about all of them. There's 1 or 2 kids that have started to pursue some other activities at the moment, but yeah, most of them still playing.
Okay, so they're kind of multi-sport athletes, most of them, aren't they, for the most part?
Oh yeah, just about every single one of them is a multi-sport athlete, absolutely. Which is, I think, obviously that goes back to kind of the parenting piece. I think, when you look at really successful athletes in college or beyond, they were all multi-sport athletes as kids, and so I think the Boerne parents have done a really good job of focusing the right way of, okay, this is athletic development for our kids early on, and they play a bunch of different things. They get great hand-eye coordination, they get explosive power, they get quick, they get fast, and then, we get to see what they develop into from there.
That is Tim Chris joining us here on the Boerne Brew. He's written a book, How Boerne Made History and Played on Their Field of Dreams. It's available at local bookstores and online. I know it just came out I think it was yesterday as we're recording this middle of the week, but what's been the reception? How does it work as far as books? When do you sell most of the books? Is it when they're initially released? Is it later through word of mouth? Because I know you've written a few books.
The books get sold when there's a large marketing push behind them. So, there's 4 million books a year that are published.
Wow.
Not many of them ever really see the light of day past, maybe it's a few, maybe it's a couple hundred copies or so. The really, really good ones, though, it obviously helps if you can get some people that are very, very well known to read it, review it, and tell you whether or not they love it or tell you that it's crap, because obviously then it kind of tells you which bucket it's going to go into. But no, I was fortunate. I joined the Internet Baseball Writers Association and SABR, which are two baseball groups of writers and historians. And one of the gentlemen from Iowa actually just published a review of the book here recently, Professional Critique, and he was very complimentary of the book. He wrote some really nice things about the book, and I was blown away by his kind words. So it was greatly appreciated. So hopefully the hope and goal is that, yes, it is that people do like it, and obviously it resonates with the community, and they appreciate the fact that we've now got a written record of the story, and we can relive it and celebrate it as we continue to live our lives.
So looking back at that season, that was 2024, so you probably still, a lot of memories still fresh in your head, a year and a half ago, whatever it's been. Because I believe before this team, because they go district, sectional, state, regionals, and then, they make it, 10 of them, I think, make it to the World Series. But what was the furthest? I think was sectionals the furthest they had ever been before that 2024 season?
No, Boerne had been to state one time, but they didn't win a game there. So they went there and they blanked. So in all those, like you mentioned earlier, everything up to the U.S. Championship game is double elimination. Right. So every team has to lose twice on the way there before they're eliminated. What
was the key to that team? I mean, was it just raw talent? Were they just that much better than everybody else, or what was the key?
Number one, I would say there's nothing that raw talent does not exist. So it was developed talent that we definitely had. But I think generally what you see on most Little League all-star teams is you have one or two star pitchers, and I talk about it in the book. I call an ace pitcher a kid that's throwing 70 miles an hour plus, can throw 65% strikes. Generally, you don't have more than two kids that have all three of those factors all together. And then generally you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 good hitters, really good hitters that probably are batting over 400, and then you have everybody else that bats somewhere under that. We had 12 really complete players. Yeah. So Caleb was obviously the youngest member of the team, and I talk about in the book, Caleb in the Little League regular season, he batted .595. And he pitched 68% strike percentage. So when you think about him being, quote unquote, the weakest member of the team, if that's our weak link, and Julian's batting 700, 800, and throwing 74 miles an hour as our star pitcher, and everybody else is in between those two, extremes, we're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
And so, every single kid executed. I think the other thing too is they all had really good baseball IQ.
Yeah.
And they were all very team oriented, so they all sacrificed and were very selfless for the team. And so even simple stuff, and some people love me, some people hate me because I harp on this, but when a pitcher throws a ball and it's going to end up hitting the batter, a lot of kids will dive out of the way. Our kids stood there and took the hit.
Yeah.
So we got hit by, I think, 23 different pitches over the course of those 19 games. But one of those was key. Cooper takes a hit when we're playing Mid-Atlantic, and that gave us the lead in that game. So it was 1-1 before he took that hit, and then we ultimately took the lead because, taking that hit got to walk in a run. So it was baseball IQ, so they knew what they needed to do in the moment. They executed it the right way. And so even if they didn't get a hit, if they hit a sac fly, got the run in, if they hit a ground ball, didn't get on first base, but they were able to move the runners over, they did what they were supposed to do in that moment. And so we talk about in baseball, there's the optimal thing to do in any moment in time, and it changes pitch by pitch, right, depending on what the count is and everything else. And so you've got to be a really intelligent baseball player to know what you're supposed to do at that particular moment in time. And all of our kids knew what to do, and for the most part, I'll say 90+% of the time, they did what they were supposed to do. And so when you see that happen and you combine that with really good baseball talent, you're going to have a 17-win streak. And we were just unfortunate that the U.S. Championship game went the other way, but that was a heck of a battle.
Yeah, the thing that kind of stood out to me during that time, and I was at the parade and watched the games on TV and just kind of followed them. But the kids were rock stars. I mean, they were being asked for autographs. They were being interviewed on ESPN, on national TV. I was at an event with Jason Bansky, the Paralympian who won a gold medal at the Olympic Games that summer. And some of the Boerne Little League kids were there. Some of the team members were there. And I was talking to them, and I asked them what it had been like. And it wasn't for an interview. We were just talking. I said, what's it been like? They said, oh, yeah, it's crazy. I said, girls are coming up asking for phone numbers. And I asked one of the kids, I said, well, did you give her your number? He says, well, I don't have a cell phone, so I couldn't. But, they had the police escort, the water cannon salute at the airport. I remember I was at the parade and one kid's yelling to one of the kids on the float. He's like, you're my idol. I know he doesn't mean it in that sense, like he's idol worship, but they just really took the town by storm. I mean, there were watch parties. I mean, it was crazy. What's your best memory, and how would you even explain that to somebody years down the road?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question too. I mean, I think like you mentioned, we were getting text messages and, photos sent to us and whatnot of all the different watch parties, here, not only in Boerne, but even like in San Antonio and in other cities around Texas. Yeah. And then once we won regional, now we're representing the entire region. So we were getting folks from Louisiana and Arkansas and whatnot saying, hey, please take Southwest all the way, right? And so it was just, it's hard to describe. Obviously we're sitting there with Julie Foudy, the ESPN broadcaster. She's running back and forth in the stands, interviewing folks. So, Jet would make a good play at shortstop. She'd run over and talk to the Matthews, or, Cooper'd be pitching and she'd run over and talk to Hastings or whatever. So it was just a whirlwind of different things going on. But I think, for the kids, they loved getting in the bus and going out to meet the players, the MLB players, when they got off their private plane and when they flew into Williamsport there. Right. And so they all get to ride the bus back together. And so the kids are sitting there literally, shoulder to shoulder with the MLB players. And then they're all walking around the stadium together. So everybody's signing autographs. And like you said, for 3 weeks, and I mean, really even before that, because this was happening in Waco and even Abilene too, the kids are rock stars. They're signing autographs. They're taking pictures with folks all over the place. I mean, and I tell the story all the time now, but it's the truth. I mean, obviously we play baseball all over the state in these different tournaments. We can't go anywhere in Texas. Everybody knows who he is. I mean, we go to a restaurant here in town and like they recognize who he is. And so
the other day, Boerne High was playing Boerne Champion Tuesday, Friday. I was at the games and I saw some of the players there.
That's right. Oh yeah.
I saw Julian there. I didn't talk to him because, they were just there watching the game. I didn't want to bother them. But, I saw them there. So, yeah. So, I mean, I kind of recognize them. So I'm sure they do get recognized still in town. I mean, but as far as your son, Caleb, what was his best memory?
He had a whole lot of fun the whole time. And I think that the really cool and maybe different thing for Caleb was because he was 11, there was not a lot of expectation on him to perform, right? Because obviously all these kids are a year older and, a year bigger and stronger and everything else. He more than did his job and more than played his part on the team, but there was no expectation. So he got to just play free the whole time. And, he's a kid that, he's always the cheerleader. He's always shows up. He's always ready to go. He's literally that, the kid that put me in, coach, I'm ready to play, right? And so he just enjoyed the heck out of the whole experience. He'll tell you, he really enjoyed that ESPN interview when he got to do that after the Nevada game. But even to this day, he goes back and watches those YouTube videos of those games all the time. So, he's got nothing but great memories of the whole time.
I was glancing through the book, like I said, and I noticed you go into a lot of detail. You go into specific games. You talk about players' height, weight. Was it, as far as the games itself, retracing the games, was that hard to kind of research? Did you have that all available because of technology and videos and YouTube and all that? Was that pretty easy to research, or was there a lot of work into that?
No, I mean, that was pretty easy because we use Game Changer, which is obviously a play-by-play record of what goes on. But, I mean, the way that I designed the book, it was with some input from our advanced reader group, which, thank you to the folks here in town that helped out with that. Basically, you've got 2 reader journeys. After you start the first couple of chapters, you can do the highlights reel, which basically takes you all the way through the first 14 games up to Williamsport. Or if you want to read the play-by-play, if you're like 99% of us baseball purists, and I just, the joke, then you can go to the appendix and you read the play-by-play of every single game. But yeah, to your point, I mean, again, we wanted to make this a how-to book, right? So we talk about here's how to play, and, when you look at our kids and, when I compare them to 7th graders in general across the spectrum, we did have 6 or 7 kids that were a little ahead in puberty than some other players, right? I mean, obviously Caleb was 4'11", 92 pounds. Some of our kids were already 5'6", 5'7", 130, 140. You would say that most 7th graders are probably 5'2", 5'3", 110 to 120 pounds. So like I said, we definitely tipped the scales a little on the better end of that. But it was kind of a nice mix of kids across that spectrum. Some of them were, a couple of kids, weighed a little bit more than Caleb, but weren't a whole lot taller. And then all the way up to kind of, Julian and Cooper and Caden, who are our older, and Doc too, who was one of our taller and heavier kids. So.
Yeah, and that was the thing when I saw Julian and his friends there at the game. He's a lot taller than he was.
Oh yeah, he's put on another 3 or 4 inches since that. Yeah, I think he's 6 foot now.
Yeah, he's a big kid.
I talked to his dad the other day. His younger brother's actually taller than Julian is now too. It's funny. His younger brother's the same age as Caleb. So he's in 7th grade. But yeah, I think his younger brother's got an inch on him now.
Well, that is Tim Chris joining us here on the Boerne Brewer. He's written a book, How Boerne Made History and Paid on Their Field of Dreams. You going to have any kind of book signing? Is there going to be anything kind of like that?
Yeah, DBAT's actually going to set something up for us here probably early May. We'll do a book signing because obviously a bunch of the kids show up there on the evenings to hit and whatnot, and we'll probably do a couple of those around town as well. We may do some of the author stuff with Dale's bookstore here as well that they do a couple weekends a month. But yeah, like I said, we'll definitely try to be out and we're always out and about. So whenever anybody passes by Caleb, if they want his autograph or picture with him, he's always happy to oblige.
And for those that can't make those book signings, tell us how they can get a copy of the book.
Yeah, obviously, if you're here local in town, stop by Dale's bookstore. It'd be fantastic. Obviously, support local. It's obviously available online as well on Amazon, and we'll probably have it at some of the Little League events in the future. And then DBAT's going to actually carry some copies as well. So there'll be a few different places around town that'll be selling it.
What's your best memory of that time? Is there one memory that stands out to you?
No, I enjoyed the whole summer.
The whole thing? Yeah.
Obviously, Cato getting the strikeout when he got to come in and pitch against Nevada was a lot of fun. So he did, get that little solidified moment in history. But then just from a, total personal, just watching him, when we took him up to Niagara Falls, we had a day off. And so we checked him out and took him. He slept the entire way up to Niagara Falls, the entire way back. And I equate it to like a kid going to college for the first time. When you come home at either Thanksgiving or Christmas,
sleep.
All you do is sleep for like a week and they're just mentally and physically exhausted. So that's where the kids were at a little bit in that time at Williamsport. So the parents, we definitely pulled them out from time to time. And a lot of times we'd check them out and we'd just take them back to the hotel and they would just crash.
Yeah.
But it was just, they just needed the rest. And plus too, they're right in the middle of puberty. They're all growing like weeds. And so, put really good food in them, let them sleep, let them mentally, chill out for a bit, and then they can get right back in the fire.
Yeah, I still need to do that. So, anyway, Tim, we want to thank you for joining us on the Boerne Brew. Looking forward to reading the book, and thank you for your time.
I appreciate you, Kerry.
And thank you out there for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Boerne Brew.